Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our quarterly board meeting with the Virginia Museum of Natural History Board of Trustees. I want to especially welcome our new board members. We heard in April that we have a couple of new board members, so Mark Buss and Ann Burnett, and then congratulate the 3 board members that were reappointed. And I'd like to start us off just with a reminder that we're still under the emergency order of the governor. Hopefully that will change over the summer, and we're looking forward to meeting in person. But in the meantime, we'll hold our meetings on Zoom. And a couple of ground rules regarding that. You will see that there is no chat option. We are on public live stream, so we're sharing this through YouTube as well. And it will require that we conduct any votes by roll call. Also, if you do have any questions or comments, it would help me in managing the meeting if you use the raise hand option, which is under participants towards the bottom of your screen. So I'd like to start by asking our secretary to do a roll call for attendance to establish quorum. Nathan?
Good morning, everyone. Can someone please confirm if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Abdul Baki. Dr. Benzing.
Here.
Ms. Ann Burnett. And I see an Ann's iPhone on the Zoom. That looks muted.
I'm here.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Welcome. Ms. Jennifer Burnett. I believe I saw Jennifer just join. She also is still muted. Mr. Buss.
Present.
Ms. Cooper. Mr. Cothran.
Present.
Dr. Evans.
Present.
Ms. Murner.
I'm here.
Good morning. Dr. Nash.
Here.
Mr. Phillips. Mr. Quinones.
Here.
Ms. Russell. Mr. Sanford is here. Ms. Stowe. Mr. Chairman, I have 10 Board of Trustees members present currently.
Great, and thank you. And that establishes our quorum so we can conduct our business today. You should have a packet of information that includes an agenda and some other reports and other items that we'll be spending time with this morning. The minutes have been distributed. And are there any corrections to the minutes from our previous meeting? Seeing no raised hands, I'll take a motion to accept the minutes.
This is
So
Lisa
moved.
Murner. Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Art and a second from Lisa. And once again, Nathan, if you'll lead us in a roll call to establish the vote to approve the minutes.
Dr. Benzing.
Yes.
Ms. Ann Burnett.
Yeah.
Ms. Jennifer Burnett.
Yes.
Mr. Buss.
Yes.
Mr. Cothran.
Yes.
Dr. Evans.
Yes.
Ms. Murner.
Yes.
Dr. Nash.
Yes.
Mr. Quinones.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Sanford also votes yes, the motion passes. Great, and on to my chairman's report.
You'll recall that in our last meeting, we passed a resolution recognizing Barry Dorsey for his service, and we sent a framed and signed copy of that to his family. And so I did receive communications back from his family. I wanted to share those with you as they were both addressed to me and to the full board. And I read, Dr. Benzing and the Virginia Museum of Natural History, thank you so much for the copy of the resolution we received in Barry's memory. He loved the museum and members very much. Some of my family and I have visited the museum several times. It is a wonderful place. It's our sincere hope that the museum will continue to grow. It is a valuable asset to the Martinsville community. I have found many copies of things Barry kept from the museum. You will be kept in our thoughts in the future. We hope to be able to have a memorial service in Martinsville by late summer if COVID has declined enough that area people will feel safe to attend. Thank you again, Jeannie Dorsey Burks, and that's his sister. So very nice note. And we'll look for more from that if there is a ceremony in Martinsville. I also wanted to share with you, quite on a different note, some communication that I had with our legal counsel, and I welcome Audrey Burgess here. I should have also welcomed our representative from the foundation, Len Poulin, to our meeting. Following up on some discussion that we had at our last meeting, and this was largely in the part where we were talking about development and marketing committee report, there were some questions about our fiduciary responsibility regarding audits of the museum's finances. And she advised that some of her clients actually have their auditors, internal or external, come and report to the board itself at least annually. And typically these reports would be held in open session. You'll recall that during our meeting last time, she responded that we do not have to approve those audits, but if we want to, we can review those, and we can certainly follow up if we want to bring the auditors in for any questions. And I believe Joe has shared with you a letter describing the most recent audit in June or July of last year perhaps. So that's summary on that. I wanted to also bring you up to date on some activities that I've been involved with regarding my role as your chair since our last quarterly meeting. So I did attend the Jefferson Awards, which are held by our foundation. And I thought that was really well done and some well-deserved recognition to a couple of our foundation board members, DB Poley and Lisa Stoneman, for their work on, with particular interest, the Dragon Festival at the museum, but more broadly on research around dragons. And then also recognize the National Society of Black Engineers. Cindy Gray, who of course many of us know as a longtime administrative assistant who passed in the past year. And then Jim Beard, our emeritus curator. So all of those awards were well deserved, and I thought that was a great ceremony. You've all seen the announcement that we are a finalist for the National Medal from the Museum and Library Services. So that's exciting, and that's something we're looking forward to hearing more about. I attended the tree planting ceremony in honor of Dr. Dorsey and Bruce Wingo, who both passed. That was in April. So there are a couple of new trees around the museum in their honor. And I attended a drive-through event in Waynesboro called Treasures from the Vault, together with Faye Cooper. And that was a second drive-through event that we've held in Waynesboro, and it's raised a lot more awareness of the museum's mission and role in that community. Finally, I guess I'd like to make some remarks, as this is my last meeting as chair, and that's some observations really on the 2 years of tenure that I've had in this role. And so I kind of look back on some of what has happened. And you'll recall, those that have been on the board for that period of time, that May 2019 was when we found out that we were being transferred to the Secretary of Education from the Secretary of Natural Resources in Virginia. And there was a lot of nervousness about that. And I think also we recognize some opportunity. And I think in the 2 years, we've realized that that has really benefited us. I think there's been a lot of great connections, and that secretary has been very supportive of the mission of the museum. And so I'm happy the way that turned out. We also spent some time in our strategic plan in August of that year and identified some major projects. So I want to look at those. We talked about research centers of excellence and collections, and maybe we'll hear a little bit more about that moving forward. I believe it's on hold until we establish a full curatorial staff. We did also mention the education pavilion at that time, and we're happy to report that that's been fully funded with the help of the foundation, and the plans on that are being finalized at the state level at this point. And so I want to thank our donors and our advancement staff, as well as the foundation, for their work in supporting that initiative. The Virginia Waynesboro campus is something that's very close to my heart. And I think when I took on this role, I mentioned that would be important to me throughout my tenure. And as my final act as your chair, I'll be unveiling a sign at a public ceremony together with Senator Hanger and Representative Avoli, as well as the mayor of Waynesboro, indicating where the future site of that campus will be, because we're now very confident moving into detailed planning that we are going to be able to break ground on this. And that's extremely exciting to me. I think we'll also hear about Douglas Avenue. That was one of our strategic projects, and the improvements that are going on there through the facilities committee. And then we're looking forward to reaccreditation in 2025, and that's something we're going to have to think ahead on and probably create an ad hoc committee to support. Of course, the other thing that's happened in that 2-year time period is the pandemic, and I don't need to tell anybody that it's made for an interesting year. It's certainly changed the way we've done business. I think I've remarked in these meetings before, it's actually created opportunity, I think, for some of us that have to travel at distance to participate much more in these meetings by doing that virtually. And I think our attendance has actually gone up, which is good. But we're going to move back to in-person meetings. And of course, we're all looking forward to that. So with that, I guess my last duty as chair moving forward will be to lead the annual review for our executive director. And as stated by the bylaws, the review is prepared by the executive committee, and it's subject to an approval at our August meeting. So you'll be hearing more from me before the August meeting about that process. We had some discussions in the executive committee yesterday that it would be helpful for those new board members and those newer to the board to understand what the process is for that review. We will be asking the executive director to put together a summary of his annual activities, and we'll be using that to inform our performance review. And during the August meeting, we'll be holding a closed session to go through that under the personnel exemption. So as I said, you'll be hearing more from me about that. And that's my chairman's report, unless there are questions. Seeing no hands, may we have the treasurer's report, and you should find this in your packet.
Okay, so everyone should have the report for third quarter. Taking a look at it, obviously we are doing very well. Budget is $2,990,923, and year to date, $2,939,218. So obviously, I guess, admission to the museum has been down since we have been closed, but I think that is going to pick up. So evident, what we talked about in our finance meeting, and of course, there'll be a report on that, but, obviously revenues are looking good. Expenses are mostly in line. Major increases in subscriptions. That's due to new demands for telecommuting and Zoom conferences. And the adjustments will be made to account for these new expenses when we do the fiscal year 2022 budget. So that is pretty much the treasurer's report. Does anybody have any questions? I know that agency service charges will also continue to increase due to recent work on the capital projects. So that's pretty much the treasurer's report. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Any questions for Jennifer? Okay, moving on then, let's ask Joe to present his executive director's report.
All right, thank you, Tom. So first of all, I just want to mention to everyone that, and this is something I mentioned to the foundation yesterday, our outlook just a year ago was, let's just say, cautious. We just really didn't know how things were going to turn out. And, thanks to our supporters, thanks to the foundation, thanks to the service of the Board of Trustees and to our elected officials, we're just in really good shape. I do communicate regularly with other executive directors around the country, and some have done very well despite the pandemic, and others have had rather difficult struggles to contend with. So I just couldn't be happier with the response of the staff and the boards and those who support us in state government. So that puts us in a pretty good position. You may remember, for those who've been on the board for a bit, that 1 year ago, we released our Museum Without Walls 2020 to 2025 strategic plan. Because of the pandemic, we really didn't have a lot of fanfare, no press releases or anything like that. So we decided just to quietly move forward with them. So I was going to walk through where we stand 1 year into this strategic plan. We had decided that we would have two main areas. One would be to enhance our impact as the only institution that is collections-based to study and preserve elements of natural history and educate our citizenry. And then the second kind of major area of impact would be sustaining VMNH by enhancing our draw to impart high-quality scientific information and nature-based experiences for all. So as far as the first section goes, as us being the state's only collections-based science institution, we were going to establish research centers by essentially combining outreach that we conduct and utilize different areas of the museum together to put forth common messages. So these were going to be led by curators and include other aspects of the museum as well. But of course, between some retirements and some other turnover, two of our researchers are still relatively new. And we are going to start a search for Dr. Beard's successor this fall. So since we're going to bring on new talent and cultivate new talent here in the building, we've decided to put that on hold for the moment to really come up with centers that represent what we do in terms of us communicating with the public, donors, elected officials, and others. Tom had mentioned the rehab of Douglas Avenue. We have a architect on contract, and he's just about done and ready to start to replace the roof on the old Douglas Avenue building in a way that we can eventually get to a point where we have proper collection storage there. The one last holdup that we have is that apparently the roofing material that was selected has a warranty of 75-mile-per-hour winds. It will withstand 75-mile-per-hour winds, but apparently the building sits in an area that apparently can receive up to 115-mile-an-hour winds under certain circumstances. So that's the last detail that architect is dealing with at the moment. So we hope to get or see work conducted on Douglas Avenue here very shortly. And then lastly, the gold standard for museum operations and research and collections and operations is reaccreditation through the American Alliance of Museums. Tom had mentioned that we would put together an ad hoc committee. We mentioned in past meetings that we will form that committee in 2023 to put together the report to AAM and basically request reaccreditation for 10 years. So that will be something that is upcoming. In the meantime, staff will be reviewing policies and so forth to ensure that all of our information that regards our operations are up to date. As far as sustaining VMNH, we had talked about the creation of an early childhood activity and learning center. This would be contingent upon the completion of the work at Douglas Avenue. So we'll see that coming in a couple of years. So basically we would move the physical library over to Douglas Avenue and still be accessible by our researchers, and then use the approximately 1,500 square feet to create an area of learning for our pre-K through 5 visitors. We feel that helps with our sustainability because we think it will enhance our draw, increase the amount of exhibit and activity space within the museum, and also encourage memberships for repeat visitations. Tom had mentioned the Gene S. Adams Education Pavilion. We're just waiting on some final approvals from Richmond, and so we should see work begin on that as well shortly. When that is completed, we have been exploring the concept of a treetop canopy walk from the Education Pavilion across Oakdale Avenue into J. Frank Wilson Park across the street from the museum. So in the meantime, some of the homework we've done, we've looked at online other similar experiences around the country and have documented the architects that have done that work. In fact, one of our new board members, Mr. Buss, he does business frequently in Atlanta, and we discussed very briefly, we'll re-engage in this conversation later, that perhaps on one of his trips to Atlanta that he might visit the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, which has a relatively new canopy walk. It would be great to have a firsthand look at that. I would extend that to anybody else on any of the boards or a staff. If you're visiting an area of the country that has a treetop canopy trail, it would be nice to get a firsthand look at that. And lastly, the VMNH Waynesboro campus, we have received approval for the detailed design. That will begin July 1st. The funds will be made available and we'll put out an RFP. It'll be an 18-month process that will go through with an architect and design firm. And so with that, what we've done is we've created a set of 5 teams. We want to kind of get ahead of the work that we will eventually do with architects. So that way our messages about the design elements and the experiences that we want to put forth are going to be at the front row. So these 5 teams will each be quarterbacked by a staff member, and we'll have an exhibits team, an exhibit design team, we'll have a landscape team, a science lab and green technology team, and a visitor services team. As well as the staff member, we will have kind of a core group of board members from the foundation and the board of trustees, as well as a community representative. But we will be inviting everyone from any of the boards to attend any of the team meetings that we have. So you'll hear more about that here in upcoming weeks as we prepare for the detailed planning. So as Tom said, I just want to echo the excitement surrounding that. The sign unveiling will be broadcast live from Waynesboro. We'll make sure to send out that information so you can join us remotely if you like. However, it'll be at the corner of Arch and Main this coming Wednesday at 2 p.m. Anyone is welcome to join us there. So our marketing and advancement team has sent out a press notification, and a press release will be following that as well. The last couple of things I want to bring up, first of all, is our ability, the agility of the staff is really remarkable. We, and I'm going to ask Jonathan Martin to actually step in for a minute here and talk about the opportunity, which we mentioned at previous board meetings. We've made a bit of progress on. It's the idea of implementing this $500,000 grant we got from the Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy to enhance our energy use efficiency and install renewable energy sources. So Jonathan, can you take just a couple of minutes to talk about where we stand with that and where we're going?
Sure thing. So we are in the final stages of the energy audit. So they've pretty much gone through the facility with a fine-tooth comb, starting with the lights, going through HVAC, through our water usage. Everything has to be on the table. So looking at those numbers, they take and they implement a plan. So a plan to save us X amount of dollars with HVAC upgrades, X amount of dollars with lighting upgrades. And from there, we can put a plan together to implement with a solar package. So you want to get your energy usage as low as possible which is the first part of the group's plan. And then you add the solar in to subsidize your energy usage. It's getting to the final stages. They have presented us with an Excel sheet with kind of what our options are. Included 2 EV chargers, so for electric vehicles on the premises. They included extra lighting on the exterior. We have to take that now and we have to essentially right size that project to the savings that we see from the HVAC and lighting and just in general in the building. So once that's finalized, they'll put a presentation together for us and we'll be able to see what the final project looks like. Then we can either proceed with that or send them back to the drawing board. But they're at this point working at our pace just to meet our needs as far as energy usage is concerned.
Yeah, thank you. I'll open questions up broadly for the director's report here shortly, but does anyone have any specific questions for Jonathan and his report on the energy package? Got a thumbs up from Lisa, thank you. And a hand as well. So Lisa, you're—
Yeah, I guess that means Lisa has a question, so we'll let her have the
Yeah,
floor.
I meant to raise my hand, but the thumbs up was good too. So I have a question about the EV chargers. There are EV chargers and then there are EV chargers. So I would just want to make sure that the EV chargers we're installing aren't the kind where your car has to be parked there for like 10 hours to get charged and are more not necessarily rapid EV chargers. So it's like level 1, level 2, level 3. So it's not important right now, but just something I think we should think about. Nobody will use the EV chargers if they're those long level 1s, probably. And I will attempt to figure out how to lower my hand.
Well, thank you. Yeah, there's still plenty of time for review, so I appreciate that coming up now. I think the kind of strategic goal of the chargers is to give staff and/or visitors an opportunity to recharge vehicles while they're here. So certainly, I don't think our visitors will be sticking around for 7 hours on most days. So that's a great point. Any other questions about the energy savings project? All right, the last portion of my director's report that I just want to talk about that I thought was pertinent to the board was our pandemic response. So I think staff did really well. They maintained high discipline, both in terms of personal protection while at work, incorporating personal protective devices and telecommuting. But also our staff has done really well. And it's not just our maintenance crew going through with backpack sprayers, making sure things are sanitized, but our educators working with their facilities when they do have guests in house and so forth. So it's really been, a high discipline environment, and we've done pretty well with that. So we are opening back up to 3 days a week, starting in a couple of weeks right after Memorial Day. And then as long as things continue to progress, I'm proposing that we open 6 days a week beginning in July. So we'll get back to where we were before. The staff have talked and we've looked at historical data. We thought that maybe keeping Mondays closed to general admission would be good, so that projects that involve everything from sanitation to updates of exhibits and maintenance on the building can be scheduled to take place on those days, particularly since we really don't get a lot of revenue from our Monday openings. So that's what we'll take a look at in July, and we'll report back on the efficacy of that in August. The last thing I'll mention about the pandemic response is, I don't know if you saw, I think a lot of this got splashed across the media between CDC and whatnot, but we just did late yesterday afternoon receive notification from Richmond that much of the mask mandate is being removed with some exceptions. That said, we're going to continue with, and I've already alerted the staff that we'll continue with some disciplined mask usage at the museum. And the reason is that one, we count as a entertainment venue. Museums immediately just fall into that category as far as the governor's office is concerned. The second thing is that our store and box office personnel they are essentially retail, so they'll be required by state rule. So we just don't feel that there's a lot to be gained by losing the masks in-house at this point, when staff are working behind the scenes with colleagues that are both the staff and their colleagues are vaccinated, that they're allowed to forego masks at this point, but we're still trying to keep that in place. So as I said,
Pardon me, Joe. Zach, can you just mute any non-speakers for us, please?
I think you missed Zach. Anyway, yeah, so we're all set for the new fiscal year. As we mentioned before, we have a full appropriation going in to the next fiscal year, along with our detailed planning funding. So we're ready to kind of explore the brave new world that we have in front of us. And Tom, that's my report. I'll leave things open for any questions that the board may have.
Do we have any questions for Joe? And again, looks like Lisa has a raised hand. So Lisa.
Yeah, good. I didn't do the thumb this time. I'm working from my phone. So I had two questions on the roofing materials for Douglas Avenue. You mentioned that, you know, what we had purchased or ordered was for 75 miles and we're in a higher wind zone. I just want to check and make sure we're not getting a waiver, we're getting more appropriate roofing materials, right? And then the second question was really more of a request. For those of us that travel a lot under normal circumstances, and hopefully we'll get to travel again soon, if you could let us know where some of those other canopy walks are, that would be very helpful, and we can visit and report back.
Yeah, we can send out a list for that. That'll be the easy one. Sorry, just getting some notes down here. Yeah, as far as the roof goes, no, we haven't purchased or made a commitment towards anything. It was just in the design to have a 75-mile-an-hour roof. So the architect is just redoing some of the paperwork or whatever to include the more durable roof type for those wind conditions. So that was just the last. If it wasn't for that, they would be over there tearing roof off this weekend probably.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Joe, I have a question. While we're talking about COVID policies and the opportunity to open the museum back up, I'm wondering when the governor does lift the emergency declaration, if there's been any discussion about boards being able to continue to meet this way. As you know, the state requires that we are in person, and maybe this is more a question for Audrey, but are we seeing anything about the opportunity to continue to meet like this, or at least to have some of us participate this way where most of us may be in person?
So this is, sorry to jump in, this is fairly new. Of course, we got the notification about the same time as the rest of you all. So my office is currently discussing, as you all probably already know, the exception that allows you to meet in this way right now is dependent upon the existence of a state of emergency, as well as the determination that it is impracticable or unsafe due to public health conditions to convene in person. So that exception was recently codified, so it will be added to the statute in a way that it wasn't before. It technically was just in the Appropriations Act. But as far as I know, it's still dependent on those conditions. So if that remains the case, then the only electronic convening possibilities you would have would be either under that, if there was a state of emergency, or if there was a, the earlier circumstances where you could cite personal illness or disability or personal reasons for up to 2 times each calendar year. There's also a very cumbersome electronic meeting requirement that allows you to hold electronic meetings so long as there is a quorum on site. But there's a lot of annual reporting requirements and some other kind of requirements that would be in place that can be a little more complicated and require a lot more advance notice. So if all things remain as they are right now, all of the boards that I represent are probably going to be in a position where you're going to have to revert to the the status you were in before, where you were convening mostly in person with very limited exceptions. But my office is currently discussing the whole panoply of impacts that this change is going to make. And as I know more or hear more, and it's possible that many people on this call are going to hear even earlier than I would if there's any discussions about ways to make this model easier than it was before. Because as you all might remember, last spring, getting into a situation where we were having these electronically it took some maneuvering and some discussion and some interpretation of the existing law. And so I think that there's going to probably be more discussions along those lines, because as you all have already observed, I think you are probably not alone. And then a lot of boards are seeing increased participation and ability for people to participate because of the fact that it's just, from a realistic standpoint, it's easier for you to do this than it is to drive down and be there in person. So if you have any concerns or anything along those lines, I'd encourage you to make those known and talk about them, because that's how things usually get addressed, is when people bring to other people's attention how the implementation of those changes impact you.
How would we make those feelings known?
I think that's a good question. I would probably talk with Joe about ways that that you all generally, I know that there have been discussions in the past about, reaching out to the secretary or reaching out to kind of convey your feelings on things. I think what I'd probably do is just suggest consultation with your sister institutions to talk about ways that, particularly because there will probably be commonalities in terms of what people think they want to see and how they want to pursue that. So I think to the extent that you can coordinate and figure that out, that way you're not in a situation where you're inadvertently creating a game of telephone. So I would suggest probably coordinating with Joe first to figure out the best way to do that. And I'm happy, of course, if anybody has any questions, you all can always reach out to me.
Okay, so we'll take that offline, but I think there are some things that are unique about our board, in that the museum is down in that, less populous
Correct.
area of Virginia. And if we want statewide representation, it makes it a whole lot easier for us to participate.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone in that. And I think discussion about that it would be, again, it's just one of those things that situations like this are not one size fits all. And I think it's going to help everyone to be able to kind of express as this kind of gets processed, how that would impact each respective institution.
Okay, thank you, Audrey. And Joe, I don't see any other hands, so we may be ready for an advancement report. Is that right?
Turn that over to Ryan, please.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Tom. So just want to start out with the advancement report, and then after I sort of highlight some of the features on that, we want to take everyone through a quick rundown of the website, maybe a quick demo. But first, I just want to highlight a few things on the advancement report. So looking on page 1, of course, this is the snapshot of where we're at year to date as far as revenue, visitation. So you can see here both on the museum side and the foundation side. So the foundation is actually ahead of where we were last year as far as overall revenue. Part of that is some grants that we received. But overall, considering the circumstances, we're doing really well. So we've got a lot of partnerships, a lot of grants for mission-based programs. We anticipate seeing increased visitation as we add more days of operation. So Joe already mentioned sort of the planned phased reopening. But even with the limited days we have, visitation has been relatively strong. So we're very pleased with that. On page 2, I just want to highlight the endowment growth. So you can see here, it's a snapshot of March 31st, 2021 versus 2020. So we've seen significant growth there. And that's primarily just the investment growth versus additional gifts. So it's grown 27% over the past year. Obviously, that's, again, a snapshot of that day, and it fluctuates daily. But again, there's strong growth there. So we're very pleased with that. Memberships are currently down as expected and sort of is a national trend. That being said, we're seeing them pick up. We're also planning for a big membership drive in August. So we're going to do a big mailing. We're going to do a social media push, target previous members and maybe folks who have been members in the past, and of course, new members as well. So also in January, our plan is to do an updated membership survey. So we traditionally do these every few years. We want to hear from members what benefits they value most, what are they most excited about, what do they want to see out of their membership. We have a lot of good ideas in-house, but it's always good to get fresh ideas and sort of input from our members. As far as partnerships on page 2, so we've got several in process, like I mentioned. I did want to highlight one that we're very excited about. It's a Hooker Furnishings partnership. So it's a combination of things. Part of the money is for need-based scholarships for Christie's programs, but also you're familiar probably with the Museums for All program, and that's the program for EBT card recipients. So traditionally, they've received greatly reduced admission rates to the museum. But thanks to Hooker Furniture's support, now the remaining admissions charge is waived. So they are underwriting that remaining $2 and $1 admissions charge. So it's a great partnership. And in fact, we've seen the participation rates spike since we announced that in March. So in March 2021, actually almost 13% of our visitors were Museums for All visitors. So very excited there, and we see a lot of opportunity for growth there, especially as we reopen and future festivals. So very, very positive program. Page 3 is a snapshot of both visitation and revenue. I want to include this as a graph format just to give you the big picture of sort of the trends, and they're very positive trends. We saw a dip in the winter months during the sort of the height of the pandemic, but we're seeing tremendous growth. And I also included April's numbers as well. So you can see things are really taking off. And in fact, April revenue was on par with previous full April months when we had full operating hours and days. Page 4, just want to highlight the Groupon revenue. So Groupon is sort of the canary in the coal mine, I guess. It's traditionally what we've seen is before big festivals, before we see spikes in visitation, we see a corresponding increase in Groupon revenue. So what happens is folks will buy these Groupons up and then use them either during the summer months or during large festivals. So we have seen that revenue increase over the past weeks. No guarantees, but probably that's going to be a precursor to increased visitation as we go forward. Pages 6 through 8 are very important additions we've added to the advancement report. We've updated quite a bit of our demographic data as to how we collect this data and report it. So on page 6, you'll see some enhanced sort of stats as far as staff demographics and also Museums for All as well. And I also mentioned that working with Christy, she's updating her data collection and reporting as well. So yeah, on page 7, you'll see the board had inquired about more detail about staff roles. So I did include a copy of the organizational chart to give you kind of an idea of who's in what position and who reports to whom. Page 8 is a copy of our visitor survey. So we've had this out over the years, but we've made major updates. So working with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and also the Department of Human Resources Management, we've updated collection categories for both gender, race, and equity. So we want to make sure that we capture state appropriate categories and information. These surveys will be out for visitors. They will not be required, obviously, but it'll be optional. And our goal is to get a high participation rate among visitors. And finally, on the last page here is our sort of snapshot of our zip code data with the corresponding map. Very positive. Over 74% of our visitors year to date have come from outside Martinsville, Henry County. So what we're seeing, even though it's a smaller data set of visitors, we're seeing a pretty wide distribution, both in Virginia, but also North Carolina and surrounding states. And in fact, North Carolina visitation is very strong. So we're currently at 19%. As we reopen, and as we run festivals again, we'll have a bigger data set and we'll keep examining those numbers to see the trends. That's the advancement report. I'm happy to answer any questions or save those until the end.
Let's go ahead and take questions now. Are there any questions? Again, if you might raise your hand, that would probably help me. Roberto.
Yes. Two things. One, just out of curiosity on the membership survey that you mentioned, will there also be do you get any kind of flavor of non-members and why they don't come back as a preemptive strike going down the line?
Thanks, Roberto. That's a great question. And in fact, what we've done in the past is send it not only to current members, but also lapsed members. So just like we do with membership drives, we can reach out to folks, either maybe it lapsed in the last year or maybe it lapsed 3 years ago. We can narrow that down, but that's a great question. And that's in fact part of what we'll do.
Perfect. The other thing was I saw in Joe's report as well, he mentioned you folks got a certificate from a tourism organization, and that's kind of, I don't know how many folks are maybe fluent in some of the nuances of the tourism people and the museum people talking to each other, but that's kind of a great kudo for me, knowing that those conversations are hard fought ones. And I just as a marketing plug, in his social media category and as well as in the advancement report, even as we start opening up, hoping that all the social media and online programming will continue. Obviously, we could be the best museum in the world, and if nobody knows it, that's not going to accomplish our mission. So if anything, I'd say even as we open up to continue to leverage the content and the news and the information we can get out there so that people, A, people will be driven to the museum, but B, people that can't necessarily make it physically will be able to take advantage of everything we're doing.
Thank you, Roberto. Yeah, it was very nice. The number of staff who've had a key role in virtual programming recently were awarded this certificate, like you mentioned, from the Regional Tourism Office. I'm sure I'll miss someone, but I can see on here Ben, Zach, Adam, Christy, others were part of that.
All right, thank
That's
you.
a great comment, Roberto, and I agree. It's maybe one of the reasons why, and I'd be interested on Ryan's thought on this, but maybe one of the reasons why we're seeing visitors from greater distance is because of our social media presence. I don't know whether you capture whether they hear about us from social media, but that's an interesting thing to think about.
That's a great point, and we capture the data in a number of ways. So just informal discussions at the box office, our staff are pretty good about striking up conversations, but also through the visitor survey. One of the key questions there is, how did you hear about us? So we definitely want to find out.
And you said you were going to, if there are no further questions, you were going to give us a brief tour of the website.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So as Zach is going to join me in this because Zach had a very key role in development of the site. And as he's going to share screen, but I just want to give a quick sort of introduction and background. So we launched the previous site in 2013. And so this site was launched in October 2020. So it's that's about the lifespan of the website and maybe a little past it. And before I start in, I just want to give credit to Zach. So again, he had a key role in this. Not only was it a complete redesign and new website, which is working in of itself, but also took place during a pandemic. And so a lot of that work was very challenging, but definitely credit to Zach. So the new site is going to give, it's basically 3 main points that are improved. So it's going to be a new look, obviously, new format, new look. Also, it's going to give us, it does give us enhanced security. So many security updates that are required by the state, and also greater functionality. So whether that's online donations, event registration, lots of different things. So those are kind of the main points there. And so you can see here, this is the home page. At the top here, you've got several drop-down menus that highlight key areas of the museum. And so Zach, I think, is going to click on a few examples here to show you.
So this is under our research and collections tab. This is our scientific collections webpage. We highlight just the general program, the general scientific collections that we hold at the museum. We try to keep it as detailed, but also as simple to understand for people who are not scientifically minded or just the general audience, so they can understand what we do have in our collections. So down here we have, of course, like the collections quick facts. If anybody in this meeting isn't too familiar with the scientific collections of the museum, this is a great page to go to. Learn just general facts about the collections. The fact that we have 173 type specimens, which are the specimens of each type specimens are the specimen or each of a set of specimens on which the description and name of a new species is based. So right there in Martinsville, we have those specimens. And as you scroll further down, of course, you have the collections areas. These are the main areas that we host collections in: archaeology, bryozoans, earth sciences. Of course, I know Joe mentioned this earlier, I believe, in one of the meetings, we have an education collection as well. And this highlights that fact as well. Scrolling down, we just have the amphibians and reptiles, paleontology. And I just want to highlight this. I won't download it because it's an Excel spreadsheet, but I believe it's quarterly. Our registrar forwards me the updated collection spreadsheets that she puts together. So it's pretty much accessible to the entire public here on our website, the collections that we do have at the museum. So they can you can download these and check out what we do have in our collections. And just continue scrolling down, you just have quite a bit in the collections that we highlight on this page. But that's pretty much a general subpage of the website. Scroll back to the top here. And of course, I'll stay on research and collections. We have a section devoted to the research areas. So if you want to learn more information about not just the areas, but the curators that are in charge of that area, you can always click on those links. So another way to get the word out about the fact that we have on-staff curators who are experts in their field in these very specific areas. Should I go back to the homepage, Ryan, at this point?
Yeah, if you want to go back to that. And I just want to mention next is the overall format. So it's basically what we have now is a dynamic site, whereas the previous site, whether you looked at it on a smartphone, a tablet, a computer, whatever it was, the format was the same. And so it was not user-friendly. So this site, basically what it does, it will reformat itself, whether you're looking at it on a laptop, again, a tablet, a smartphone. The format itself will change to accommodate the device you're using. So that's very important, and that's the technology we have to offer in 2021. So that's another major update as well.
Okay.
Zach, you want to talk about the slideshow?
Sure. So like Ryan said, this is a dynamic site, so it does format to whatever device you're using. So with that in mind, our design was based on coming up with a layout that would work regardless of what you were using to view our website. So we picked a stack design. So the first thing that we have is our slideshow. This is something that we can change anytime we want to, highlight whatever we want as far as what's timely and what's upcoming at the museum. As you can see, as the screen share is going, it's scrolling through the different areas, summer adventure camps. That's something that we're pushing now, trying to get as many signups for that as possible. But just a quick and easy way to highlight the main happenings at the museum at any point in time. As you scroll down, this is our calendar system. It takes the very first or the most current or the next upcoming event and feeds it right to the homepage. So of course today we're open to visitors, and that's what it's showing. You can click on the calendar here to come up with a more listings of what's happening each day. And as you can see, we have our board meetings even listed here. You can always click on one of those to get more information. And if you're interested, click on the meetings YouTube channel to watch this live. Just keep continuing to scroll down here. We also have this is called our dashboard. These are different stats that we can provide to the public. We can change these anytime we want to, kind of highlighting maybe quirky things, or even just something that we want to get a point across as far as how many education programs we are conducting, and you know, how successful the attendance at the festivals has been. So just a simple section where we can highlight key areas or just interesting facts about the museum numerically. Ryan, did you want to take this one?
Yeah, just quickly, it's a section for folks that want to get involved. So whether it's becoming a donor, a member, volunteering, this is a section where you can get involved. So we actively seek out volunteers, interns, and of course donors and members as well. So there are many places throughout the site where you can either donate or join. We want to make sure that it's wherever you're at, you can get to it quickly.
And to further Ryan's point, at the top of the menu bar, we have a join and give tab. That's constantly at the top right of the website. It's something that we want to make sure people understand they can get involved in many different ways, giving, but also like Ryan said, through the volunteer system that we have. The next section is our stories section. With the success of our social media, especially our Facebook page over the past several years, and especially this past year, we thought it was important to have a way for people who are not on Facebook to be able to enjoy some of the posts that we have on our Facebook page, well, pretty much daily. So it feeds into the homepage here of our website with the Facebook posts. As you can see, this is one of Ben's previous Ben in Nature posts, and you can always click to read more, and the entire Ben in Nature post from Facebook appears here on this page. So it highlights one main one, and then of course 3 separate ones, and it continuously updates and picks different stories to post up there on that section of the page. As we continue to scroll down, this is just a very basic map, obviously, location where we are, and just some very quick information for visitors that they're going to want to know right away. They can find just very easily. The next section is highlighting our exhibits. We can, of course, choose whichever exhibits we want to highlight and change them out whenever we would like. But just kind of a quick way to get people, hopefully, catch their eye and learn more about some of the exhibits that they could see when they come to visit the museum. Part of the exhibit section highlights the traveling and loan exhibits that we have at the museum. You can always click more for that. And like one of the main traveling exhibits we have is the dinosaur discovery. So just basic information about that and how people can, different museums, different organizations can go about getting this exhibit into their building, I guess. And as we scroll to the bottom here, this is our footer, just a very basic information. We do have, really want to highlight the social media integration. So down here at the bottom, we highlight the latest picture that we post to Instagram. Hopefully people who are not following us on Instagram or not aware we have an Instagram page will see this, click on it, and hopefully start following us on Instagram as well. Quick and easy way to sign up for our e-newsletter, right there, just a simple name, last name, and email address. It's one of the best parts about the new website is the integration with the Blackbaud system. And if anybody's not familiar with the Blackbaud or has not heard us discuss it, it's the foundation's system. Pretty much, Ryan can talk a little bit better than I can on this, but it's the donor management and member management software. So all the online transactions feed directly into Blackbaud, and it streamlines many of our behind the scenes processes quite a bit. Once again, we want to push the fact that you can donate online and become a member and do quite a bit online transaction wise through the website. So I'll go ahead and click on the donate button. This one takes you directly to the Discovery Fund giving page, which is the main donation fund that we try to accept donations for. I'm going to go ahead. I've already filled out this form earlier, so I'm just going to click onto this tab. Very simple to go through. We have our, of course, different giving levels, species 1 to 40, and these are the suggested donations down here. If somebody wants to give something that's not there, they can quickly click the other and type it in. One of the main things that we wanted to highlight was making this quick and easy as possible for the user. We don't want to discourage them with asking for too much information or too difficult to actually donate or become a member. So the questions and the information we ask for is very basic. Once you fill it out, it's as simple as clicking the secure payment, click pay by card. We also have pay by wallet, which is the electronic wallet that some of you may actually use. But most people are going to click on the pay by card option. What you filled in already is going to show up there. You easily click continue to pay, fill out your card information, and click finish to pay. One of the great things about the new online transaction system that we were lacking earlier, and a lot of online stores don't offer this ability, is the fact that we can customize emails, confirmation emails to in this case, the donor, and provide any information we want, any kind of contact information. If this was a membership form and they had filled that out, we'd be able to put in there the ASTC passport program as far as which other museums they can attend, quickly and easily download that, instead of having to wait for their membership packet in the mail, which usually takes about 2 weeks to get to the member. I'm going to quickly go through this now. One of the things that we're really trying to push now is our summer adventure camps. There's several ways you can get to that, but right now we have it under the education tab. So you can click on the summer adventure camps. Right now, I believe we are offering 4 different camps for ages 6 through 8. Well, 2 for 6 through 8 and 2 for 9 through 11. Quickly go through the online transaction for one of those. One of the great things, again, about the online transaction system is we can collect a wealth of information we never could collect before when it's necessary. Click on one for there. And just pretty much any information we need to collect or want to collect, we can do real quickly right there from the transaction system, online form. Ryan, do you have anything else?
No, I just want to kind of wrap things up and just thank you, Zach, for helping go through it. Like you said, it's this is a great platform that we can expand on and build and add features. And yeah, we're happy to answer any questions. We encourage the board to go through it yourself on your own time if you want, and check it out, go through it, let us know of any questions, input. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Thank you, Ryan. And I think I speak on behalf of the whole board, Zach. We really appreciate this. This is a great change to the website and very user-friendly and attractive. And so I really do appreciate your hard work on this. Okay. Are there any comments or questions for Ryan or Zach? Seeing no hands, I did want to pick up one order of business. I heard from Joe that we have a retirement. I was noticing some of the store statistics, and many of us have met Diane Clark as the visitor services manager. And Joe has prepared for us a resolution that I'd like to read and ask for your vote on. So I'm going to go ahead and read it first for the record. Whereas Diane Clark, Visitor Services Manager, is retiring after 15 years of service to the Virginia Museum of Natural History. Whereas Diane's leadership has been an asset to the Virginia Museum of Natural History. Whereas Diane led the creation and successful operation of the museum store and Paleo Cafe. Whereas Diane expanded the VMNH volunteer program, providing invaluable volunteer support for vital museum operations. Whereas Diane's work supported the museum's festivals, helping them grow into significant events. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History gratefully expresses to Diane Clark its appreciation and thanks for 15 years of faithful service to the museum, done this 15th day of May 2021 in Martinsville, Virginia, by a unanimous vote of the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History. So I would call for a roll count of the vote. Nathan, if you'll lead us through that, please.
Just want to confirm that we do not need a motion in a second here.
That's a good question.
If we need one, I
second?
move that we accept it and move to.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Second.
Okay,
Yep.
Roberto seconded it. Now I think, unless there's any discussion. Seeing no hands, we'll go ahead and proceed to the roll call vote.
All right, Dr. Benzing,
Yes.
Miss Ann Burnett,
I heard a yes.
okay, good. Thank you. Ms. Jennifer Burnett,
Yes.
Mr. Buss,
Yes.
Mr. Cothran,
Yes.
Dr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Murner,
Yes.
Dr. Nash,
Yes.
Mr. Quinones,
Yes.
and Mr. Sanford also votes yes, the motion passes.
Excellent. We are now moving into our committee reports. And for many of these committees, you'll find those documents in your packet as well. And so we'll start with our Facilities and Operations Committee. And so I'd like to recognize Jennifer Burnett as the chair of that committee for a report.
Okay, thank you. The minutes of the last Facilities Committee meeting are in the packet. We had a meeting on March 19th. Some of these things we've already discussed in prior reports. Basically, we've already talked sort of about the ESCO project. As far as Douglas Avenue is concerned, the plans for the roof are in their final stages. And I believe that we are using inmate labor to help clean up the property. So we've got Tyvek suits and particulate masks and all those things because we probably have some mold going on. So the hope is to get Douglas Avenue back up and a functioning part of the museum. The elevator has been completed. And so it's up and running. And I think it had a 30-day certification. So I'm assuming now it's fully operational. Is that okay? Got a thumbs up from Jonathan. Yes, that's fully operational now. And as far as the audio, we're also upgrading the audio visual system. And I think that's sort of, I guess that helps too in the Great Hall because it's kind of, echoes if you're in there. So it's to upgrade that. I think it's basically the system I think is broken at this point. So it will add speakers as well for the education pavilion that's outside. There will also be large screen TVs to replace the projectors. So as far as the old dated equipment, we'll be able to reuse the speakers, which we currently have on hand. The wiring and other things are going to have to be replaced because they're not to code. So it's basically bringing things, up into what people currently have with respect to their audiovisual systems and to make it a little bit easier to hear and that sort of thing in the Great Hall. So that is all I have, unless Jonathan or anyone else has something to add on that. And obviously, if you have any questions.
Do we have any questions for Jennifer on the Facilities Committee report? Seeing none, I'd like to recognize the chair of our Research and Collections Committee, Art Evans, for a report.
Thanks, Tom. The full report is document number 8 in your packet, and I'm going to leave you to read the details there. The one thing I want to point out is there is an article attached on the value of natural history collections in terms of health. And we're always looking at ways of providing talking points for board members when meeting with constituents and visitors and so on, because sometimes people don't really have a clear idea of what collections are all about other than simply accumulating things or organisms. And natural history collections are incredibly important. And since that is the mandate of our institution at the state level, it's important to know why we do this and some of the possible benefits. You can see from the report that our curatorial staff has been incredibly productive as they always are. And I wanted to commend them again for doing such an outstanding job during what has been a very difficult time. In spite of the pandemic, they continue on with their research, adding to the collections, caring for the collections, and expanding the museum's reach in terms of their programming and professional contacts. And we're very fortunate to have such a vital curatorial staff at this museum. During the morning, there were a number of discussions, and I just want to bring up some of the highlights, but the details of our meeting this morning, of course, will be presented in the next quarterly report. But things I want to bring up, Dr. Hayden Bassett has contacted the Guatemalan embassy in Herndon and is waiting to get on their schedule to discuss details for the repatriation of Guatemalan street artifacts that were gifted to the museum in 2017. Trustee Dr. Carol Nash noted that the establishment of the Waynesboro facility has aroused interest in the region for donating artifacts to the museum. And both Dr. Bassett and our executive director, Dr. Joe Kuiper, provided guidance on how the museum accepts artifacts with and without locality data. Dr. Jackson Means provided an overview of the latest developments with the museum's millipede collection and will present some of the highlights after today's meeting adjourns here. And I hope all of you will stay for that. Dr. Nancy Moncrief continued working with several colleagues on 3 manuscripts, including one dealing with the appearance of armadillos for the first time in Virginia. Dr. Kel Ivanov's first paper about vertebrates, collaboration with Dr. Moncrief regarding tree squirrel skeletal injuries, is nearing completion. And he'll soon be submitting a manuscript regarding subterranean insect traps, which is a collaboration with research associate Kurt Harden. Ivanov's department is also about to acquire a collection of exotic insects to be used in museum displays and education programs. Dr. Adam Pritchard's long-awaited monograph on the extinct gliding reptile, here we go, I had it in my head when I was reading through it, Weigeltosaurus, pardon me, Adam, will be published soon in the journal Peer J.
Dead on pronunciation, Art. Dead on.
Thank you. I'm sure the Germans would quibble with that, but that's for another time. His team will begin work soon at a site near Ashland, Virginia. And Dr. Hayden Bassett completed archaeological field work at the first site in the Smith River survey, and soon will begin work at other sites using ground penetrating radar. So again, I encourage all of you to look at the entire activities of our curatorial staff this past quarter, because it really is an impressive team doing some very amazing things. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Art. Are there any questions for Art or Research and Collections?
Can Art say that name one more time?
Weigeltosaurus.
And yeah, we are looking forward to hearing from Jackson about some exciting developments in the millipede collection and his work. And so as Art suggested, after we adjourn our business, we'll stay on to listen to Jackson for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And I think this is an opportunity to learn more about what's going on, you know, in the research part of our agency. So I hope you will stay for that. I'd like to next recognize in our chair for the Development and Marketing Committee, and that's Jennifer Burnett again.
Hello. Okay, so the minutes of the Finance and Marketing Committee are also in your package. We held a joint meeting on May 6th. We've already really talked about most of the things that are in this report. We already talked about the balance sheet. We've already talked about capital projects. And then from a budget summary standpoint, Jonathan reviewed that recently approved budget, and fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22 are identical. All positions are funded. The budget also restored our operations and maintenance funding. So, and I think there's also an across the board raise for all state employees and some potential new hires coming in fiscal year 22. So that's basically it. We've already kind of covered everything else. So if anyone has any questions on that report, let me know.
Any questions for Jennifer? I'll make one point, and that is earlier I referred to an audit letter that Joe shared, and apparently that was only shared with the executive committee. So we'll share that after this meeting for those that are interested, summarizing our last audit. Not seeing any raised hands on that. So let's go ahead and proceed to our Education and Public Programs Committee report, and I'll recognize Cord Cothran.
All right, thank you. Some of our education updates on this last go round. We'll get with the Waynesboro drive-through. We had 63 cars come through that. Approximately 160 people were part of that. So that was a really good educational setup there. Our distance learning is about to finish up. They had 17 sessions of homeschoolers this go around. So that's really good there. We've got 4 camps. I believe this was brought in earlier, 2 in June and 2 in July. Each camp's going to have 10 people to a camp. Christy was letting us know that normally that might be a little larger camp, anywhere from 20 to 25, but with everything going on, they've lowered it down and just working their way back in. So we're going to do 10 per camp. Our grant updates, Boxley grant for virtual programming, they donated $10,000. $4,000 goes towards scholarships of that money, and $6,000 will go to other virtual programming, social media, stuff like that, that the museum sees fit to use. Hooker Furnishings donated $2,500 towards scholarships, $1,500 towards scholarships. That goes from March of this year to April of 2022. And I believe Christy let us know, so far we've served 1,200 people off of this. So this is going really well. And then there's going to be a bug event July the 24th. It's not going to be like the Dino Fest, but it's going to be a nice event. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Cord. Any questions for our Education and Public Programs Committee? Not seeing any, so I'll proceed to a couple of our ad hoc committees, and the first one is our Waynesboro Advocacy Committee. Faye Cooper expressed her regrets for not being able to attend today. I think she's going to a grandson's soccer game or something like that. And so Carol Nash has agreed to step in to give the report from the Waynesboro Advocacy Committee. So I'd like to recognize Carol.
Thank you, Tom. I would like to acknowledge the work of Faye and others on this ad hoc committee. They have been persistent and focused, and it's been a real pleasure to learn about this project and to work with them. Of course, our greatest highlight is that the legislative process for approval of the biennium budget has been a success. So we have moved into the design phase, and that is wonderful news. The Wayne Theater Speaker Series continued this spring in order to support the Waynesboro campus in the area, of course. And so in March, the presentation was Stream Restoration in the Shenandoah Valley by Kip Mumaw. April, Parks, Trails, and Events, Waynesboro's Next Economic Engine, Dwayne Jones. I should also mention that the committee has met 3 times since the last Board of Trustees meeting, and the minutes are in the packet, so documents 11A, B, and C. You might want to take a look at those to get more details. We are definitely thinking about ways to better include the committee, ways to broaden the connection to, ways to be more inclusive with the community and to broaden our connections with outreach as the new museum satellite campus is being designed. And I shared a report that I had written on the complexity of Native American cultural history in the Shenandoah Valley. Tom has established contact with the Virginia Division of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. Matt Heller there has agreed to assist with creating maps and that would facilitate or enhance exhibits within the museum itself. Joe and Greg met with Shenandoah National Park Superintendent Patrick Kinney, who has been on the job now for almost a year. And of course, the drive-through show, Treasures from the Vault, on May the 1st, and we just heard about the attendance there. We do have a request or recommendation that we would like to make to the Board of Trustees. And it's a bit different from the description that we received earlier from Joe with the 5 teams that have been established to work on the design process. And it's simply that the Waynesboro Advocacy Committee serve in an advisory role to the staff during the selection of the detailed planning firm. And that we represent the interest of the full board in that capacity. I don't know that that needs a motion or anything along those lines, but it is a recommendation that we are making. And that is my report.
Thank you, Carol. And that recommendation does not need a motion as it comes from a committee with more than 2 trustees. So we can move that we adopt the resolution to empower the Waynesboro Advocacy Committee to represent the board regarding the selection of the firm and advise the staff as that process moves forward. And this is something we've done before with the Advocacy Committee in different stages. It kind of facilitates the process such that we don't have to have the quarterly board meetings in order to make the process move along. Any questions or discussion of that motion? Hearing none, I would like to ask Nathan once again to lead us in a roll call vote to approve.
Dr. Benzing,
Yes.
Ms. Ann Burnett,
Yes.
Ms. Jennifer Burnett,
Yes.
Mr. Buss,
Yes.
Mr. Cothran,
Yes.
Dr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Mariner,
Yes.
Dr. Nash,
Yes.
Mr. Quinones.
Yes.
Mr. Sanford also votes yes, the motion passes.
Thank you for that. Our next committee is again an ad hoc committee that I formed just earlier this year to address the question about university partnerships and how we can engage better the museum in some of the grant writing that goes on at different universities around the state and include our outreach and educational programs as part of their application, specifically to the National Science Foundation as part of their broader impact statements. And that committee has met. It includes representatives from this board as well as the foundation board and a number of staff members. And we've generated a report, which you find in your packet. I think the work of the committee has moved along quickly. And I think the next steps will involve the staff putting together a report to be distributed in the fall and to make contacts directly with the university and research associates. And so I don't know if Joe wants to share anything further regarding that, but that's essentially the report from our University Partnerships Committee.
Just for the sake of the new board members, we wanted to leverage the talents that we have on the board to give input into how we communicate with universities to look for ways in which we can be part of grant teams. In particular, many grants across different agencies like to see beyond just the research on a particular topic, but that research is packaged in a way that's publicly digestible and helps educate the public in various scientific disciplines. So since we're experts in that, we do it already. The idea is if we can piggyback on those grants, we can provide funds for our exhibit team and for Christy and her education team. So we hope to begin to kind of broaden that out. I'm borrowing this from other museums that have successfully implemented a similar kind of program within their states.
Any questions for Joe or for me about the University Partnerships Committee? Seeing none, I'd like to recognize the chair of our Strategic Planning Committee, Lisa Murner, for a report.
Hello, everybody. The minutes for our meeting are also in the package. We met April 14th. The meeting covered really 3 areas. 1, our strategic plan. 2, the museum's pandemic response. And 3, a really robust discussion of diversity and inclusion. I'm not going to talk about the first 2, the strategic plan and pandemic response, because we've already hit those in the meeting. With regard to diversity and inclusion, we had a really good discussion of what the museum is doing, what the museum is planning to do, and a little bit of benchmarking I did with the Denver's version of a Museum of Natural History. Coming out of the meeting, we decided to focus on 3 things going forward: diversity and inclusion framework for the museum, an intern program for the museum, and then technology. And I'll just talk about each of those briefly. So with regard to a diversity and inclusion framework for the museum was provided with an example of a diversity and inclusion framework. You can see a copy of that or a link to that in the minutes from our committee meeting. And Joe and his team are going to work on developing a diversity and inclusion framework for the museum. With regard to interns, we're going to meet again and talk about that. The idea is to develop sort of a pipeline of folks that are interested or could work at the museum in the future based on starting with an internship. And technology, we didn't really discuss that, but we talked about talking about the next meeting. The idea is really to talk about what some new and innovative technologies, virtual reality, just as an example, could do with and for the museum. So that's my report, and I'll ask if anybody else from the committee would like to say anything about our discussion, because it was such a very good, robust discussion.
Any other comments or questions for Lisa?
That is my report.
I'll make one, and that is that I know the governor, through his Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office, recently released a report called One Virginia, and that might help provide also some guidance for us as a state. It does provide some guidance for us as a state agency. And so I'll be sharing that together with a couple of other documents following our meeting. And I think that's something that the Strategic Planning Committee can also use, as well as the staff, to move this initiative forward. Roberto has a question.
I just wanted to make a plug, since I know there's been other discussions going on about the foundation and forward-looking kinds of things. I don't know how we can kind of give them a slight heads up that some of these issues down the line may require some, funding, so to speak. So some of this blue sky brainstorming ideas, how those can be conveyed to the foundation in case they hear some things that they may also have interested in and could get ahead of the curve in helping fund things to nudge them along, so to speak. So just collaboration point on getting the foundation to be on the same brainstorming page as we may be.
That's a great point, and I'm making a note to myself. Part of what we try to do as a board is communicate to our foundation any special projects and any funding that we think we would ask them to raise for them. So that'll be something we bring up in our November meeting. And so I'll make a note to myself and I'll help Jennifer to remember as we move forward on that. Before we move to our next committee report, I do want to just say for those that are new to the board that if any of these committees are of interest to you, if you have particular expertise or interest in any of the topics that were brought up and would like to engage yourself further, I would say that as a board, a lot of our work gets done through our committees. And so I would encourage you to express your interest to either myself or any of the executive committee members moving forward. Lisa.
Yeah, I'll also say, and this will be something, Tom, you and Jennifer will have to talk about, but we are going to have to change up maybe some committee heads, given that Jennifer now presumably will be chair and she heads 2 committees. So she probably doesn't want to head 2 committees and be chair. So that's something we'll have to think about going forward.
Yeah, and it's the prerogative of the chair to assign committees, obviously with some eye to what people are interested in doing and their expertise moving into the next year. And so with that, let me transition to our nominating committee and bring Lisa up again for a report from the nominating committee as well as some action items.
Sure. So we do have to vote on our new executive committee members, and I will just put forward the slate. The committee did meet by phone and come up with this slate. So recommended for chair would be Jennifer Burnett. Recommended for vice chair would be Lisa Murner. That would be me. Recommended for treasurer would be Roberto Quinones. And then Nathan is already secretary. And so I'm not sure if we have to vote on him or not, but Nathan Sanford would remain as secretary. And then Tom would become our immediate past chair. So I put forward this slate for whatever voting procedure we need to go through, Tom, unless there's any discussion.
Let me ask whether first any nominations from the floor for any of those positions. Hearing none, and as this recommended slate comes out of a committee with at least 2 trustees, we don't need a second. So I will go ahead and ask for a roll call vote.
Dr. Benzing,
Aye.
Ms. Ann Burnett, Ms. Jennifer Burnett,
Yes.
Mr. Buss,
Yes.
Mr. Cothran,
Yes.
Dr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Mariner,
Yes.
Dr. Nash,
Yes.
Mr. Quinones,
Yes.
and Mr. Sanford also votes yes. The motion passes.
Thank you. And I look forward to my role as past chair. And welcome Jennifer to the role of chair, and certainly will serve as any a resource for her as she moves into this position. Are there any?
So I want to, can I take the floor?
Yes, please.
Okay. So yeah, as Tom had mentioned earlier, if anyone is interested in a particular committee, if you will let us know. But also want to take this opportunity to recognize all that Tom has done for the museum, and that we hope he will continue to do as the immediate past chair, but would like to present a resolution to the board. So I'm going to read that now. So whereas Dr. Tom Benzing was chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History from 2019 to 2021, whereas Dr. Benzing worked tirelessly to advocate for the VMNH Waynesboro campus, whereas Dr. Benzing led the museum during the development of the strategic plan of Museum Without Walls 2020 to 2025, whereas Dr. Benzing was an enthusiastic advocate for the Virginia Museum of Natural History across the Commonwealth and the Virginia General Assembly alike, whereas Dr. Benzing was a constant advocate for Virginia's fresh water and other precious natural resources as a board member, board chair, and avid angler. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History hereby expresses appreciation and admiration for Dr. Benzing's leadership and look forward to his continued dedication to the mission of the museum. Done this 15th day of May, 2021 in Martinsville, Virginia, by unanimous vote of the Board of Trustees of Virginia Museum of Natural History. And if we could take a vote on that, and I'm sure it will be unanimous. So I move to accept the resolution.
Second.
Do we get a second?
I seconded it.
Okay. Nathan, can we get a roll call?
Dr. Benzing,
Aye.
Ms. Ann Burnett, Ms. Jennifer Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Buss,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Dr. Evans,
Aye.
Ms. Murner,
Yes.
Dr. Nash,
Aye.
Mr. Quinones.
Yes.
Mr. Sanford also votes yes. The motion passes unanimously.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate that very much. And I look forward to continuing to serve on the board and stay in touch with you as our business develops over the years. I also, I don't know if everybody sees it this way, but my square is just above Jennifer's. And so I did receive a gavel. And so we'll make it pretend like it's coming from Jennifer's square up to me. So thank you for this gavel recognizing my service. And I'll let her carry out the rest of the business for our meeting.
Okay. Does anybody have any announcements? We're done with the agenda, but are there any announcements or any other comments? Joe?
Yeah, I just want to make sure the board is aware that on July 22nd, we have an evening opening reception of our butterflies exhibit. So that's a brand new exhibit, an area that was rather underutilized and now has been very creatively utilized by our staff. So we'll have a members opening for that, and the way things look, that will be in person 100%. So again, it's evening of July 22nd. On July 24th is our Bug Festival. Well, it's not really a festival. It's going to be kind of more of a bug days kind of thing. And we're going to ease back into these public things. We're selling timed tickets like we did for the drive-through shows, except that, of course, they're a longer time frame. It's going to be much smaller scale than what we've done for some of our family science festivals, but it should help us ease back, I hope, into kind of more normal operation. So I will take the liberty of saying that trustees and foundation board members who participated in festivals or similar events really got a chance to see the staff in action and learn a little bit more about our public outreach capabilities. So you all are invited. Same thing goes for October 16th. Unless things change and we don't get the trend that we hope, we plan on a full re-engagement with our Family Science Festival model. We'll have Dragon Fest on that day, which is one of our largest festivals here at the museum. So, Jennifer, thank you. Just wanted to make sure you're aware of those important dates for your calendar.
Thanks, Joe. And I also wanted to mention, this was included in the materials that were sent out for the meeting, but to mark on your calendars the future board meeting dates. Our next meeting will be August 21st. Then we have one November 20th. In February 2022, we'll have the Thomas Jefferson Awards in Richmond, and we may want to tie that in with our General Assembly visits. So I'm sure we'll have more information with respect to that as we move closer to that meeting. We have May 21st, 2022 and August 20th, 2022. And as was discussed earlier in the meeting from Audrey, stay tuned as to whether we will continue with Zoom meetings or have meetings in person. And again, if you want to express a preference one way or the other, reach out to Joe and talk to him about that so that he can relay that to Audrey. Do we have any other announcements or any other business?
Just Jackson's presentation.
Yeah, just a reminder that we will hear from Jackson after we conclude our business.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess business is concluded.
Hello.
Jackson,
Hey, Jackson.
I'll go ahead and introduce you. A number of you who haven't had a chance, in particular, to really get behind the scenes anytime recently. Jackson Means is a recent PhD grad from Virginia Tech, and so we picked him up on at least a temporary basis. So he is an expert in myriapodology, or the study of millipedes and centipedes, and he's been working in our collection, as you heard from Dr. Evans earlier, on that collection. So he's been with us for roughly a year, or I can't remember, Jackson. You've kind of hung around for years as a graduate student and whatnot, so you might need to update that timeline, but he's done some really good work for us and has moved the invertebrate collections further. So he has about a 5-minute presentation on the exciting discoveries that are taking place right here within 10-15 minute drive of the museum and across the Appalachians. Jackson?
All righty. Well, thank you, Joe. Let me share my screen here and get this presentation rolling. Oh, sorry. I'm using my wife's setup. I'll make sure I do it right. All right. Can you all see that? Can you guys see my presentation?
No.
Oh. All right. Well, let me move it over. I'm trying to share.
There it is.
All right.
Looks good.
All right. Can you all see this then?
Right now it's on the switch displays.
Okay. Okay. Let me just, sorry. It's supposed to be this one. Share. How's that look?
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay, good. All right, so it's just the presentation. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Thanks for having me. You're already here. But I'm going to be talking, as Joe said, just quickly about what myriapodology is and what I do as part of the museum. I'm going to start kind of broad scale with my research and then narrow in on millipedes. It's a brief little presentation, but I just want to say this species you see here is a really beautiful example of crypsis, which is being able to blend into your background. It normally would not be on moss, but this is actually a new species. It's undescribed from the coast of South Carolina, from sandy deposits, and so it like blends right in with sand. And it's just a really beautiful specimen. So I had to show it off. So the two areas of science that I study in a broad sense are taxonomy and systematics. And before I get into millipedes, I just want to explain what these are. Taxonomy, in a simple sense, is the discovery, description, and naming of new species or groups, taxonomic groups. And then systematics is understanding how those groups relate to one another evolutionarily. So here, for example, I have 3 different species that are in the same tribe. They're closely related, but they're actually in different two different genera, and these two, the two yellow species are more closely related. And so that's an oversimplification, but that's the idea. Is basically I describe new species and I figure out how they relate to one another and what that can tell us about evolutionary patterns over time. So millipedes are my chosen group that I study. As Joe
Jackson,
mentioned,
you are still on the first slide.
Oh, come on. I'm sorry, guys. This is my, I'm clicking share screen and it's not, okay, here we go. Does this work?
Yes.
Okay, gosh, I'm so sorry.
Don't worry. Just make sure your cursor is on your screen so you can advance it.
Yeah, I don't have two screens. This is my wife's cool setup. She's an executive person. Anyway, okay, so this was the cool species I was telling you about. That's sand adapted. And then here are the different groups that I was saying. These are the three different species, and that the two yellow ones are more closely related than this red guy here. They're in a different genus. And so I describe new species and try to figure out how they relate to one another. So the group that I study are millipedes. As Joe mentioned, myriapodology encompasses millipedes, centipedes, pauropods, and symphylans, which are much smaller and less well known. But millipedes are really nice models for study because they're very slow moving. And so they're fairly easy to catch. They're detritivores, so they eat leaves, lichen, rotting wood. They don't bite. They're very, very like kind of peaceful, like cows, of the forest floor. But they are often chemically defended. And so instead of having venom like centipedes are fast-moving predators that have venom-delivering jaws. Millipedes instead produce poison. And it runs the gamut of all sorts of different poisons these things produce. But the most potent is hydrogen cyanide that some millipedes produce. That would be specifically these really colorful ones that I showed here. They produce hydrogen cyanide and they have these bright colors to advertise their toxicity. And so that's just a really cool, area to study. But one of the most exciting things about millipedes is that they're really understudied. They're incredibly diverse. There are thousands of species. Appalachia is actually the epicenter of diversity for multiple groups in the world. And yet very few people have studied them. So before I came to the museum, Richard Hoffman was a world-renowned myriapodologist. I'm sure many of you knew Richard Hoffman personally. He was considered, probably the best myriapodologist, most knowledgeable in the world. And because of that, the Virginia Museum of Natural History has one of the biggest and most important and most diverse collections of millipedes in the world. And so we get requests for loans, people come to visit the museum. We have a lot of really, really important specimens that are vouchers for people to come and study. And so, but there are a lot of different species that have not been described. And so it's kind of a wide open, exciting field where I can go out and find new species and make new discoveries fairly regularly. So there are two big areas of my research that I focus on, or that, the process of doing taxonomy and systematics. The first being collecting, actually finding these specimens. And so we go out, Cal and I, you can see Cal actually hiding here, poking his head out. We go out all times of the year, including when it's snowing. Millipedes like it really cool. So you can go out and find them when it's pretty cold out. And we explore the Appalachians. We look under leaves, logs, rocks, and we go to places that frequently we have an idea there might be a new species. Either it hasn't been explored before, or we have specimens in the collection that were collected in the 50s or 60s or something and have not been recollected since, and we need genetic material for them. And so we will target those spots. And so thus far this year, Cal and I have actually found 5 new species in the genus Nanaria that you can see here. In Virginia alone. We actually just found on Wednesday of this week a 6th new species in Tennessee, right over the border, right south of Damascus at Backbone Rock, which is a really, really cool place. So we've been having great success. We've been collecting and it's been very successful this year. The second half of my research focuses on genetic sequencing and phylogenetics. And so we just created this new lab at the Virginia Museum of Natural History, and it'll allow us to extract, amplify, and then we send off for sequencing to big facilities, these genetic sequences of these millipedes, and we can use those to compare them, determine evolutionary relationships. It's much more, many more characters and much more insight than we would get just looking at their morphology alone. So it's pretty exciting, and that'll be fun. So we've been doing a lot of collecting, kind of building up our library of what we want to sequence, and then we're going to start, once it gets really dry and hot, we start sequencing and everything, because millipedes go underground when it's dry out and we can't really find them anymore. So for my research personally, I've had a pretty good year so far. I've published 3 papers, described 45 new species. Now, most of that was from my PhD work. However, that work was informed completely by the Virginia Museum of Natural History collections. So as I said, Hoffman had collected tons of specimens, and especially in an area from around the whole eastern US, all the way out to Arkansas. And so we have, lots of things to collect and go looking for. And so that informed my PhD. However, there remains over 600 undescribed species in our millipede collections, which is an outrageous number. That is a lot of unknown stuff. It's from all over the world, specifically, Africa, some stuff from Southeast Asia, South America, but then a lot of things from Virginia and the United States. And so that's like 600 undescribed species, like multiple careers could be made just working through the collection. And of course, we're discovering new things every time we go out. So for my current projects, I have a follow-up to my recent revision of the genus Nannaria, and that's the one that I mentioned, that we had found all these new species. We're thinking we're probably going to get around 10 to 15 new species and publish those. These are just ones that we weren't able to find in time for, I had to go ahead and publish my dissertation at some point. And so we're continuing that work and finding some more species. I'm also working on a group called Florida bolus, and that's what's in this picture here. And these guys are from Florida, and we think we have a new species. And then we just submitted a redescription of the largest Zystodesmidae in the world. And Zystodesmidae is the family that Nannaria and these other really brightly colored flat-backed millipedes are in. But we just submitted that with a Mexican collaborator, and it's a Mexican species. That's the largest Zystodesmidae in the world. It's about 6 inches long. It's like a huge honking thing. And then I'm working on a species catalog, which is basically a checklist and kind of history of each species in the millipede family, the Chelodesmidae, which is the second largest family. So we have a lot of projects kind of going at once. But basically been focused on an area for right now. But with that, I'll open it up for questions, and hopefully that ended up working. You guys saw that. That work out? All right.
That's great. And I loved the question mark at the end.
I had to use that. That is a species from, I think, Africa, some part of Africa. So it's not my photo, but it's a perfect one, for questions. So got to use it, right? I've tried to get millipedes to curl up like that, but they just don't want to do it.
Nicely done, Jackson.
Thank you. You guys have any questions about millipedes or anything? Well, if you ever see any on your property, let us know, because you may have new species. They're fairly common. We just found one. One of the new Nannaria species we just found is actually from Bassett, Virginia, and then down into Ridgeway, and kind of goes around Martinsville. At the museum, we found a species in the little park behind the museum, but that's one I just described in the revision. So for some reason, this new species kind of dodges Martinsville and goes around it. So there's always possibility that you have something new on your property.
Thanks, Jackson. I think this is all a great example of the work that goes on every day behind the scenes on the research and collection side of the museum. So thanks for giving the presentation today and yesterday.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson. That was interesting. Can't say I'm a huge fan of bugs and millipedes, but it was really interesting. And it was a good view of what the museum does. So are there any other announcements or any other business, anything else to be discussed? Hearing nothing, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we're adjourned. Everybody have a great weekend. See you later.
Bye, everyone.